Welcome to the ISO NextGen Road Safety Seminar. Thank you very much for being with us today. Last week we had a great session on climate change, and today we have a very linked session on road safety. Now, road safety is an issue that does affect us all, but we don't often realize it. I mean, it's a steady trickle of accidents every day. Nothing like the huge effect of a plane crash in your country. Yet, every day, 3,500 people are dying in road accidents. It's a steady trickle that builds up to one of the greatest challenges that we face today. Today, we're going to encourage you to interact with some of our panelists who are going to explain what road safety is and also make you contribute to helping save lives. We're going to start with Professor Gord Lovegrove. I'm going to call him Gordon from now on, who works for the University of British Columbia. He's going to give us an overview of what road safety is. So I'm going to pass him the floor, and we'll be very grateful if you could have some questions and answers at the end. And the other panelists are ready to respond as well. Okay, Gordon?
Hello, everyone, and thank you. So you should now see my screen. It's called Road Safety Overview, and I'll be sharing more of an overview of the problem, scale of the problem, evaluating levels of safety, topics about sustainable safety strategies, and as the end goal over the coming weeks is to develop and refine a business case. My personal advice on business case development, I teach engineering economics, and business cases is something all of my students are avidly interested in. So great topic, and happy to be speaking about this to you. Right off the bat, I just want to acknowledge, sitting in the room with me, I'm actually sitting in the Netherlands. The Dutch Road Safety Research Institute is Dr. De Vera Twisk, a road safety researcher with SWAV, and I thank you very much. The other person I want to acknowledge is Dr. Fred Wegman, who is the former director of SWAV, and a lot of the material on sustainable safety comes from SWAV. Now, there is other reading that you can look up as well that I'm citing a lot of material from. In fact, I'm blatantly taking material from, so you'll see a lot of that throughout the presentation. As has been shared, we face a huge problem, folks. It is the 9th worst epidemic in the world at current trends. It will be the 3rd worst. It's not only costing us human lives, one life is too many, folks. It's costing us lots of money. So you should now see that in terms of graphs. You know, engineers and their equations and their graphs always want to see the equation. So there's what happens at current trends, but something called the Decade of Action for Road Safety was passed by the UN in 2010, calling for action. This is not good. We're not doing good enough. And so the World Health Organization has issued a global status report on road safety, lots of good reading and summary points in there. Most of the people I'm talking to, I presume, have seen this, know all about it. I cribbed some stats out of it. I'm going to flip through these quickly. I don't want to bore you to death. But the bottom line is, folks, that we have a big problem. And that problem persists. Despite our best efforts to date, the number and severity of deaths has remained unacceptably high. If you want a soundbite, for every person who dies, and one person is too many, 20 more are injured. And that's a soundbite, I think, in a business case we need to keep at the top. You know, what's the stat that was mentioned earlier? 3,500 people per day. It's crazy. It's insanity to, what's the definition of insanity? Hoping things change, but doing the same things over and over, doing nothing differently. We have to do things differently. We have new laws approaching speeding, drunk driving, wearing helmets, seat belts, child restraints, but they aren't necessarily being well enforced. What's wrong with that picture? So the framework for the Decade of Action, okay, we need to increase global funding in this issue. We need to strengthen our management systems. Thank you, ISO. We need to improve the quality of data. Thank you, ISO. And this is where we want to go with this presentation, and let this be an incentive to all of us. So Pillar 1, road safety management systems. We now have a road safety management system document, and ISO has been involved throughout. What have we been doing well? Well, to date, our traditional approach has always been in response to identified road safety problems. The problem with that is it's not sustainable, because number one, you actually have to notice there's a problem, and until you have people getting injured and or worst case killed, you don't have a record to notice. So you have to have this history of human suffering and the budget to fix it. But we can do better than reacting after the fact, can't we? Or can we? Well, reacting after the fact to date, there's the picture in front of you. We have way too many traffic deaths per 100,000 population. And going back to, 5 million lives is what we want to save. I'd like to save all of those, all lives, and get us down to 0. And that's Sweden's zero vision. I know that's what SWAB is shooting for as well. So we need to be a little bit more proactive. So what is proactive? Before anything is built, evaluate what's planned and improve the level of safety to reduce and preclude injuries and death from happening in the first place, right? So that is where the word sustainable safety comes from. We want to have a system that is designed so that we can sustain safety. Now, I'm getting into some suave material, so you'll notice some headings here that are out of sync. 1.1.2 out of a report that was published by Fred in 1996. But basically, man is the measure of all things. We are over 90% of the problem, our driver error. So we can improve the road, we can improve the vehicle to be more forgiving, thank you very much, but where humans are involved in driving, we're still making mistakes at an alarming rate, and that is the big problem. How do we get the human out of the equation? Well, an integrated systems-based approach is part of the solution to being proactive. And the suave 5 principles of sustainable safety are something I subscribe to, and in summary, you look at roads being monofunctional through different types of roads, different purposes. You look at making the traffic streams homogeneous in terms of mass, speed, and direction. Design your roads so that the driver using, or the person not driving, perhaps walking or cycling, expects or has the correct expectation set by the design. People make mistakes, so we need roads that can be forgiving. And that could be as simple as just having a wide shoulder on the road, or a landscaped recovery zone if you happen to drive off the road at curves. The big new one here people are really pushing hard on is the ability to keep the task less than overcoming or overwhelming the person's capabilities. So in other words, keep the driver's capabilities greater than the difficulty of the task that they have at hand. So it's a system solution, a safe system approach to road safety. One of the things I'm big on is self-educating or enforcing road design. It goes back to setting expectations of the users on those roads. And that could be something as simple as where you've got roads or intersections that conflict potentially between cars and vulnerable users or unprotected road users, those should be the lowest speed limit roads. On the other hand, where you've got highways where you're all in the same direction, all in the same mass, all in the same speed, 100 kilometers an hour is more for mobility and efficiency. Remember, when you have speeds over 20 or 30 kilometers an hour, you have a huge percentage of pedestrians. If they get hit, they're getting killed. And that's where a lot of these things come from in terms of 30 km/h, where you've got a potential for conflict between heavy vehicles and light vulnerable road users. Another example of self-enforcing or self-educating design is to separate the road users and road functions. So here's why we have local roads, primary distributors, and district distributors. But more support is required. So we look at the two newest additions being the ability of the user to understand and be aware to balance their task capability and with the demand of the task that they're involved in, whether it's walking, riding a bike, or driving a car. So how do we design that road system to maintain the user task capabilities greater than the task demands at hand? We're not a homogeneous group, are we? New and old drivers in particular. One is inexperienced, the other one is losing some capability. So we need, for example, ITS and retraining ways to assist older drivers. We need to have zero tolerance for distracted driving. Cell phones is a problem. Graduated licensing for new drivers. So control the difficulty of the task as they're getting more experienced in time and driving, then let them be graduated to a higher level and ability and task difficulty. Zero tolerance for alcohol, etc., etc. And forgiving road design, because of course nobody is perfect. And I've talked about this before, and there is lots of research still needed in this, and I think we have another speaker that'll probably talk a little bit more about road design, so I'll leave that to her. But when we talk about translating, okay, so we've got these 5 principles into sustainably safer roads and transport. Some specifics for vulnerable road users: physical separation, lower speed zones, pedestrian-friendly car fronts, bumpers, bonnets. Who rides these in the audience? You don't all have to put up your hand, but we know that scooters, mopeds, you can go fast enough to kill yourself on these. When you're on a bicycle, you can only pedal so fast. You can still hurt yourself seriously. But with motorized two-wheelers, including electric assist, we have a real problem with these. What do we do, and how can we deal with these? It is a real high-risk group. Another issue we need to be careful in terms of separating streams, right, is freight. But we need freight. That's the foundation of our economies and our standard, our quality of life. So how do we deal with them? Again, there are ways in advancing sustainably safe programs, or more sustainably safe programs for heavy vehicles, heavy goods vehicles. Other translations, homogeneous road designs. The smallest proportion of the trip should occur on the least safe proportion of the network. Each function on the road to be unique, understandable, and recognizable. So these are just ways to translate from principle to action. I think, Catherine, we probably talk more about your specifics, so I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here. But basically, watching those conflicts, intersections are where conflicts occur. So separation, the shortest and safest route should be the same. Avoiding obstacles, obstacles with opposing traffic, minimizing that trip overall. And above all, and this is again tied to the business case, we need to monitor, to learn. We're not going to be perfect first time. We obviously haven't been for the last 100 years on road safety. We need to learn from those mistakes and improve, and the business case should have a good monitoring system built into it to feed back into improving it and keeping it up to date. The other thing in terms of a foundation of a good system that is safe is land use. We know that designing safer communities is a big thing of where safety starts, because if you can get people walking, biking, busing instead of driving, guess what? What did I say? You just got the human out of the equation. You've just saved 90% of those mistakes from occurring in a 3,000-pound weapon, haven't you? So what we want to do is have people look at land use as well. And when we have land use, then we don't need to worry about so many engineering solutions and road types, because people aren't necessarily using roads to drive. They'll be using ways, perhaps off-road pathways, to walk and bike, as well as getting on a tram or a bus, right? So one of the things that the folks at ISO wanted me to talk about is, okay, so this is all great. We've got some specifics, but we have to measure things and we have to monitor things, and I already mentioned that. What do we do at UBC, the University of British Columbia? So my Sustainable Transport Safety Lab, what do we do? So this is a blatant self-advertisement. It will be short, though. Please hang in there. There are better speakers coming after me. me. One of the things we like to do is we know strong leadership needs to have dots connected. So we have reliable, or we're shooting for reliable empirical assessment tools, collision prediction models, things like that, to give better information, better tools for decision makers, because we know when leadership has a vision of where they want to go, they need to have that ammunition to help them connect the dots for people they're trying to convince to come with them in that journey towards that vision, right? So stronger leadership, better informed, is what my lab is trying to do, is to turn theory into applications for emerging problems such as road safety. One of the areas that we are looking at as well, now this is not my lab, this is not my picture, again this has been cribbed from the Swedish road safety researchers, and these are instrumented bike probes, and on these bikes have some fantastic tools, instrumentation, inertial sensors, cameras, heart rate monitors, and what we're doing is trying to get off-road data, because pedestrians and cyclists, the data in injuries and exposure or kilometers driven, or the number of trips they make, or what their trip is, or their perception of comfort and safety, isn't always easily measurable by traditional methods of engineering and research. So what they've done and what we're doing in our lab, these just are nicer looking bikes, so I use this one instead, but go to my website if you want to see what we're up to as well. We've got ours up there. Is a way of quantifying people as they ride a bike, and then we talk to them, and we develop models to quantify potential future perceptions of comfort and safety. Now, another area we're in is promoting sustainable safety, sustainable communities, which again promotes sustainable safety or safer communities as well. And so what is a community? Well, it's a lot of different things, not just roads and safety, energy, emissions, waste, public gardens. So I just put this in here and say, hey, by the way, my research lab, this is the other thing we promote here in terms of sustainable safety. But at the end, if you look at the last few, a sense of community, happy, involved citizens that feel this is their community, they want to be involved, and strong and inclusive, transparent leadership. No matter what we're dealing with, if we want to have permanent, sustainable change, people, we need good leadership, and a strong sense of community is what that starts with. Now, what I've got up here is related to sustainable safety as well, and this is something called the fused grid neighborhood that we, using our models, our empirical tools, suggested could reduce 60% of crashes. 60% of crashes. Now, I don't know about you, but when I saw that number, I was scared a little bit. I thought, okay, I did something wrong. I rechecked all my equations, all my formulas, because it makes no sense that you could reduce 60% of crashes. If we could have reduced 60% of crashes, why didn't somebody invent this one 50 years ago? This is like the new bread slicer, right? So, but we checked, we double checked, and our models came back, and we had 95% confidence levels, statistical analysis, the usual thing engineers like to do with their equations, right? 60%. So when we looked at that, this is something that we came up with a fellow from Eastern Canada, Fanis Gramenos, and the Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation. As a land use planner as well. I'm just a transportation engineer, so the two of us teamed up. We'll be publishing a book later on this, because we have a lot of research that was done to test and stretch to see. So can you tell, what is it about this neighborhood? I don't know if I can use a pointer on this, but the red lines are roads, okay? So these are the major roads. These would be collectors or distributors, major distributors. And this area, just in terms of scale, this distance is about 400 meters by 400 meters. Okay, so you're talking about, what's that, 16 hectares in the range of? These areas are about a typical city block, okay? 80 meters on a side, roughly. So the little red stripes in here are the local roads, okay? So what is different from that to traditional neighborhoods? What makes this safer? I don't get it. All right, let's go through. So here's a grid, okay? Roads, continuous, high connectivity, again, right through, whether they're a major road or a minor road, high connectivity, right? All right, here's a cul-de-sac, no connectivity, fantastic. I can live in this little cul-de-sac here, and I can get onto the highway by driving. Okay, how do I get onto that? Oh, I got lost. I got to go back here. There's only one way in and out. Wait a sec, is this neighborhood that accessible? Okay, so it's protected from through shortcutting traffic, but it's not always the most accessible in and out, right? All right. So psychologists, health professionals, land use planners, guys like me, geeks, engineers, have done a lot of research on this. And I know this presentation is being recorded. I apologize I'm going too fast. I'm on the clock here, and I've got to get done. So let me just skim through saying, no matter how you look at this thing, it looks good. It looks more sustainable. And for me, it looks way safer. So let me give you a few hints on why it seems to operate so well. A little animation here. Got to have some moving pictures, keep people in focused. So it assigns through traffic or district traffic to the perimeter. It is predictable local traffic only. So if I live in one of these places and I want to come over here, I can go off-road quicker than getting in my car, driving out and around. It's less than a 5-minute walk across the neighborhood, or bike in a couple of minutes. And meanwhile, look at all this green. I got green everywhere, don't I? These are all green parks. This is beautiful. So I can walk to my corner. So anyways, I'm going to keep skipping. I'm just going to animate some of this. It's self-explanatory. Again, these are the routes through. How would you make one of these? Well, you start with your traditional vehicle major road grid, right? Those are 1 or 2 minutes of travel, half-mile grid. This is, whether or not it's in your community or not, this is traditional. It could work with a non-grid community as well. We also have the human scale, the broken. It's still connected, just not by roads. What we're showing here in red are roads. We overlay the two, and this is the fusion, as in fused grid. 2 scales, pedestrian or bicycle, and vehicular. And then, of course, we connect with green spaces, otherwise known as restorative spaces or parks, fresh air creators, etc., etc. But remember, and I'm down to my last 3 slides here, so I think I'm on time. I'm very proud of myself. It does come down to data, okay? And this is a slide right out of the WHO briefing for their Global Road Safety Report. We need data, quality data, and lots of good quality data. But we have a problem with data. So we need better data, and that's where the road safety management system comes in. But we also need people, like we saw with great laws that aren't enforced, aren't effective. We need people to implement that road safety management system, don't we? So advice on business cases. I think we need to think big. All right, be realistic in your expectations. Even with good business cases, road safety improvement will take time. It takes a generation to rebuild neighborhoods if we're going to think about, for example, the fused grid, or to change policy to do the analysis. But think about those barriers in your community, in your culture. You guys are the local experts. Wherever you're listening from, you know your culture. It's not me in the Netherlands or in Canada. It's you in your community, your government, your leaders. So be preemptive in your thinking of what would appeal to them and how to make it effective to overcome those barriers. And remember, we're going to, at the end of the day, show the benefits outweighing the costs, right? That's business case lingo. Stick to 2 or 3 key messages. They're going to need it. The 9th worst epidemic, number 3 by 2020, unless things change. For every death, 20 more are injured. Over 50% of which are our kids, our next generation, our young, you guys, age 6 to 40 years old. No, there aren't any 6 months old in the audience. For each dollar invested in road safety, I'd love to have in your community, for your business case, the number of lives per year that could be saved. Remember, it takes a generation to change. This is just what I've observed. It could take less, could take longer in your culture, depending what you've got going on, right? We've got huge issues worldwide now. We have budgets that we're fighting. So keep it simple, keep educating, keep enforcing, and go after those minimal admin, low-hanging fruit strategies, my advice as well. But you know that better than I do. All right. I think that's my last slide, and I just want to say if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now, or we can wait till after everybody's talked. Summary documents, you want more reading, there's my website, there's the sources. I stole a lot of material from borrowed, not stole, and thank you very much for your time. Do you want me to leave this on here? Shall I stop sharing now? What would you like? Can't hear anybody. Okay, wait a sec. See you. I will ask you after.
Wait, hello, can you hear me now, Gord?
Oh, there we go. Yep, gotcha.
Hello, that was a very good presentation, very inspiring, very comprehensive as well. You went through many items for different countries, because clearly the situation for a developing country and for a developed country will be completely different. Right. Only 15% of countries around the world have even the basic policies in place, the 5 basics of preventing speeding, drunk driving, having child safety restraints, seat belts and helmets. And only 15%, that's 6% of the world's population, is protected under those comprehensive laws. So you've outlined very clearly the whole spectrum of the very basics, getting the laws right, to more advanced urban planning, which you showed us at the end, which I find fascinating. I'm just going to add a comment. We haven't received any questions yet, so please, do send us questions. Gord will be delighted to answer. We've got a few questions from the panelists, but I'm going to use my strength as a moderator to be able to ask my questions first, and also add some comments. The first thing is, you mentioned the United Nations Decade for Road Safety. That started only in 2011, which is very recent. And ISO brought out its standards at 39,000 in 2012. So we're talking about a very recent awareness, a very recent global campaign on all levels to reduce this tremendous death rate that's happening. As you said, it's the young and the elderly, the vulnerable users, who get affected the most. Particularly in developing countries, they found that these people are not even in the statistics because they're often poor. Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of my colleagues was waving at me. Is the image okay? And the biggest problem is the lack of political awareness, the lack of a business case. Many countries don't even have a ministry. The Ministry of Transport does not even care about security, not like the aviation, where if a plane crashes, it's considered a big thing. And so building up this political awareness is incredibly important, and this use of a business case is as well. So I think enough spoken from me. I will pass the floor to the other panelists. We've got one question in. Click on my window. Okay, that's a bit of a... okay, I'm going to ask one of the panelists while I figure out what this mysterious question is that we received.
Well, Karine, can I jump in here?
Yes.
Karen said, in South American developing countries, quality data is a huge problem. Institutional management, very little. How do we in these countries approach this? And I'll be going to Peru this November to actually give a course to practicing professional engineers on exactly what to do about that road safety data problem. And there is a method called more subjective road safety management. And that involves things like, if you're a civil engineer in that country, you've got a million things under your hat to do, right? I mean, you're fixing sewers, water mains, landslides, in addition to road safety. So you haven't got time to be an expert and know all the greatest software and the tools in road safety. So one of the things that can be done is simple conversations. Management by walking around is talking to various community leaders and actually gaining from them information. As well, you're in the community, so you generally know some of the worst areas for crashes. So as a road safety engineer, if you know where a lot of the crashes are occurring, you go to that location, you probably can very quickly on the spot do an exposure assessment in terms of how much traffic is there. You've probably got more than one spot. You compare the worst with each other, you identify, you rank them. That's real simple. There you've done it, just black spot analysis, right? For those in the audience, I presume most of you know what that means. Ranking of your most dangerous spots. So then you identify, okay, these 1, 2, 3 are the worst. Then you got to go to your community politician, get them motivated. How do you get them motivated? Well, in developing and low-income areas, one of the best ways is to get the citizens, the experts of the community motivated by saying, hey guys, you're the ones that are getting wrecked in these crashes. Are you interested in this? And we have story after story where people are parading down community streets with banners saying, improve our intersection, or whatever it is they want to improve. The politicians listen to that. So there's real quick and dirty. It's after 10:30, or whatever time we're in zone, which zone, I've got to be quiet. On to the next speaker. Sorry, hope that helps, Gary.
Gordon, sorry, we didn't see your face, and that's a shame. Could you please remove your screen share? Because we'd love to hear you. You're very passionate when you speak. We'd love to see you.
My apologies. I've been moving my arm. Move my arm some more. Okay.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to just thank you very much. And what I'm going to do is ask a couple of our other panelists if you have questions, because we haven't received any questions yet. I think a lot of people will be viewing this later and asking you questions online. Remember, you can ask questions at any time, and the panelists will be happy to respond. So it was, let me have a look. I think, Mathew, you had a question? Mathew, is that right? You had a question for Gord?
I did. I was just hoping that he might be able to expand on the sort of point with regards to our population is increasing, the number of road users each year is increasing, and
yes.
What's your view on the amount of accidents and injuries and damage to road safety as opposed to the increases that we're seeing each year in terms of road users?
Okay, so you want me to comment on... it sounds to me like you just answered your own question. As population increases, road users is increasing. Are you asking me to clarify by what rate? Because in the little area where I come from in Canada, excuse me, I gotta blow my nose. Pardon me, I just wiped the microphone at the same time. I've seen, or we have observed, road users increasing at a rate twice the population increase. I mean, that really adds a sense of urgency. So good question. Thanks, Mathew, for asking. Is that where you were going with that question?
Yeah, pretty much just trying to acknowledge that we do have more people on the roads, and do we see the accident rates and the injury rates increasing in proportion to the road users, or are some of the implementations that we're sort of going through helping a little bit, but we need to increase on those? Or what's your perspective?
Oh, okay. So how are we doing with traditional methods? Are the rates of fatalities increasing in keeping with population growth? Actually, what we've been seeing recently and aggressively in more developed or higher income countries is it's going down or it's plateauing at best. In low income, middle income, it's actually going the other way. Because guess who's motorizing and wants to keep up with the higher income big brother Western family, right? I mean, unfortunately, for example, in Peru and China, was in China in May. It's crazy. Everybody wants a car. They're still very expensive, but everybody wants a car, and they've got fantastic highways. They also have the world's leading high-speed rail, by the way, so their transit and rail is great. But we have to be very careful in developing low-income, middle-income countries to help them get ahead of the game. If anybody needs to be proactive, they do, that's for sure. It is a problem.
Thank you very much, Gord and Mathew, for those questions. It's true that for developing countries, it has become a development issue because competitiveness is linked to how efficient and safe your roads are. And the problem with developing countries is that often their emergency services are overwhelmed by what's happening. And it's often the very poor, the very vulnerable who are being hit, who are not protected by the shell of a car, who are being killed. And these might be the poor people commuting to work in these big suburbs. And when they die or are maimed or injured for life, you can imagine that the economic effect is huge. And that's why the World Bank is very interested and considers it a development priority.
Right, and we didn't even get to talk about India. That's another one. I was there a couple of years ago, and it is absolutely crazy. It's a zoo with everybody everywhere. I call it organized chaos. It's amazing. More people aren't killed. It's just amazing. All modes, all directions, one road, one space, all speeds.
Yeah. Wasn't there a statistic that 10 countries in the world account for 50% of all fatalities, and I think India was number one. You might be able to confirm that. They had the equivalent of 2 jumbo jets a day of people dying, 700 people a day dying. It's
Wow.
terrible. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, you know, that's you raise a good point. I often state that. I say, you know, when a jet airplane crashes, countries mourn, people gather and demand public hearings.
Mm.
And this happens in some countries that you just mentioned. I actually hadn't heard that about India. 2 jumbo jets a day is a great descriptor. In British Columbia, it's 2 per year. I still think that's absolutely ludicrous. It's crazy. And what's done about it? And the difference is that people are getting picked off one at a time. They're not all dying 200, 400 at a time. And so it's a disparate problem. And there's not a private industry like the airline that can be pointed to, hey, you need to do something. You need to be safer. When car owners buy a car from the dealer, it's bought and thanks, it's yours to take care of. We don't have that. We need to have that sense of urgency and that public call for action. And but people love their freedom. Having your hands around that steering wheel, it's like candy in a baby's hand. It's tough, isn't it? But the driver is the problem. So we need to be better drivers and have safer roads and safer vehicles, because drivers are not perfect, as I already said.
Mm. Thank you very much, Gord. We're going to have to wrap up now slowly. Shame, because I know we had a few more questions from the panelists. As a final comment to what you were saying, apparently one of the problems that the UN decade has identified is this fatalism, this idea that, oh, well, people die, it's God's will, or it's just a cost of development.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, absolutely. And also, blaming the individual. Oh, he was a bad driver. And now there's this huge shift towards the safety culture that you were discussing, where we realize that we can save lives. And you mentioned Sweden. That was amazing. They had 135 children being killed every year on the roads. And they said, stop, no more. And last year they had just 1 child killed on the road. And it goes to show the power of government policies and that we can make a huge difference. And I wanted to underline that before we move on to the other panelists. Sorry, I know you had questions, but now's your time to speak. We're going to move on to Kathleen. Kathleen Tunia, who was from the International Road Federation. The International Road Federation was one of the liaison organizations for the UN, the ISO standard, 39,000. So Kathleen, I now pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to join you all here today. I'm going to put on my, try and share my presentation here so that you can all see what I've prepared for today. I think I'm going to have to go back. Sorry. Back a slide. Do you all see my presentation here?
Hello, yes, Kathleen, we can see your presentation and we're looking forward. You can go ahead.
Okay.
By the way, I just want to say a big thank you to Gord. It was a very good presentation. Kathleen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Gordon as well for the fantastic presentation, because it really is a perfect basis and background for the presentation I'm going to make. So Gordon, thanks. You've saved me about 30 minutes of work here and everybody about 30 minutes of listening time. So I think a lot of what I'm going to do is build very much on the fabulous basis that Gordon has built, particularly around the issue of safe systems. So I'm going to move forward here. As stated, I'm working with the International Road Federation in Geneva. And yes, the International Road Federation has been involved since the 50s, actually, since 1948, in various road issues and safety issues at a global level. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. In particular, the goal of this presentation is really to inspire a discussion about a possible future ISO standard in the field of road safety that will be picked up and continued after the Google Hangout. as we've discussed during Gordon's presentation, there is a need and a benefit for international good practice, also for international standards. And we can talk a lot about why that is beneficial. As was also discussed in Gordon's presentation and afterwards, this issue of road safety only recently emerged as an international issue, I would say really beginning around 2004, which was the publication of the first World Report on road safety. Until then, very little substantial was known about the actual situation globally on the ground in diverse countries around the world, particularly low and middle income countries where, as has also been discussed, data systems are very underdeveloped or simply non-existent. So until, I would say, really into the 90s, the issue of road safety was a national issue. It was a national problem. Part of that, and this is only my supposition, may also have been due to the fact that until, I would say, the 80s and 90s, there wasn't a whole lot of truly global road transport. I mean, of course it was happening, but if we think about what happened in the 80s and the 90s, you know, we cannot ignore the phenomena of globalization. And on the back of globalization, we had a boom in the increase in land transport across borders. And also, of course, economic development, where people in countries, in low and middle income countries who had very low incomes, all of a sudden had higher incomes. And as has also been discussed, one of the first things that many of these people have done is to go and buy motor vehicles. Now, the availability of a motor vehicle happened in many countries before countries had the opportunity to even think about standards and laws for road safety. I mean, I remember, because I've done quite a bit of work in Europe, the phenomena that happened in Central Europe, so what they call now in Europe the new member states in Central Europe, in the 1990s, when all of a sudden borders were open, people had increased disposable income,
Kathleen,
and at the same time, laws were very...
Yeah. Kathleen, I'm sorry to interrupt. We noticed that your screen isn't moving. Are you...
No, it's not yet. I haven't moved on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In that case, we'd be happy to see you speak if you don't mind.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I will be moving on.
You just stop sharing the screen share.
Okay.
You just press stop sharing your screen,
Okay,
and then when you're ready to share the screen, do so. I mean, I'd love to see you. It's lovely to hear your voice, but I think it'd be even nicer to see you speak.
I see. No, I spent a lot of time. But I'm going to move on to the next one. I was just wanted to mention that there was quite a lot of road crashes in that region in an absence of legislation and an absence of standards in Central Europe. So here, what I would like to do with this presentation is to inspire discussion about next steps in international legislation, international standards on road safety, because I think there is really a need for that and the time is ripe for it. So I'm pitching this presentation at a target audience of young professionals who are interested in international standards and making the world a truly better place to live in, who, though, might have limited expertise in road safety. So again, thank you, Gordon, for providing that fabulous background, because that provides, I think, very fertile soil for the proposals or the suggestion that I'm going to make. The content of this presentation is a few words about the International Road Federation, followed by road safety as a system. We've had an introduction to that already, the safe systems approach to road safety, and a quick idea for an ISO standard. So a few words about IRF. IRF is a global not-profit organization established in 1948. Most of the stakeholders are in the road sector, public and private stakeholders. So we have quite a few. In fact, our main member base is the road construction industry. So these
Kathleen,
are really yes.
Sorry to disturb you again. Your slides are really not moving.
They're really not.
Yeah, they're not moving at all. I think it would be better if you spoke to them.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
So you don't see the...
No.
Oh, that's
no, we just see the cover slide. Oh, something's moved. There we go. Now we can see your face,
Okay.
but we can't see the slide anymore, so I think you might have to choose.
Okay, so let me see here if I can come back.
Sorry,
we can test this.
I just mute you for a little second. Yes, we're on Google Hangouts, and sometimes, it is Google, but sometimes we do have little technical issues. So do bear with us. Kathleen will just fix the issue so we can see her. Okay, Kathleen, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, I'm going to try sharing my slides again, see what happens here. All right, do you see slides here?
Yes, we can. Fantastic.
Okay, so let's see if this works now.
Excellent.
I'm going to put it into slide mode. Maybe that was the problem before. So I'm going to put it into presentation mode and see if this works. Do you see the slides now coming in?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We haven't moved them yet, but we can see a different slide.
All right, that's good.
Kathleen.
Okay, glad to hear that it's maybe working now. So this is a little bit of information about the IRF, a global nonprofit organization, as mentioned, stakeholders in the road sector, a lot of the road construction industry, and governments as members. We have 2 main offices in Geneva and in Washington, plus a very large India chapter. Now I'm going to change the slide. If you can let me know, do you see another slide now?
Afraid not.
Really? Okay, goodness me. Well, let's see. Do you see me now? If I come in? Sorry about this. All a part of the fun, I guess. So now I have pushed stop sharing, but
I think you might have to just speak to your slides, and we'll share them after the presentation. What do you think, Kathleen?
That's fine. I'm just now trying to get back to you because I cannot seem to either get back to you.
My colleague Laurent has just told me that you can put the slide on full screen and then you'll be able to show it.
It is on full screen. It should be on full screen now.
Okay. Otherwise, speak to the slides and we
No
will read them later.
No, that's fine.
Good luck, Kathleen. Sorry about this.
No, that's fine. Now I'm just trying to get out of the my presentation mode for what I can do. And now do you see the slides now?
No, not yet.
Okay, so let me try going back in. Sorry about this. It did work before. We did try it.
We did practice beforehand, but it's a little bit tricky. Oh, there we go. Looks like your slides will be on now.
Okay, so I'm not going to put it into slide sharing mode. That it didn't seem to work.
But it does seem to be moving now.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the presentation mode. So I'm just going to leave it in this. This is not presentation mode. This is just on my screen, but I will just leave it this way. Okay, so that's a little bit about IRF. Our focus areas include these ones: environment, road finance and economics, road safety. I'm coordinating the working group on road safety for the IRF, intelligent transport systems, education, and training. We do some projects at the global level. Most of the work, though, that gets done is really at the national level with our over 200 members. So, and we also have over 200 members in the road safety working group. I think that was a slide that you all missed a little bit early, though. Oh, no, here it is. So this is a little bit about the group of experts. We have 200 members in 40 countries with the mission of advocating for safe and forgiving road development, maintenance, and operation by raising awareness, providing policy guidance, and exchanging knowledge and best practice. I have only recently joined the IRF. I've been in the field of traffic safety for 15 years, primarily in the area of road user behavior. Before joining IRF, I managed the Global Road Safety Partnerships region on Europe and Central Asia, and I did that for many years, so really developing the road user behavior side. I was interested in moving away, though, from road user behavior because I really feel and felt during my work that infrastructure, if you do it right, as Gordon was showing as well in his pictures, if you do infrastructure right, you can also have a very, very positive influence on road user behavior. So I've been with the IRF really just for a few months now. So it's a fabulous opportunity for me as well to get to know you and to get to know a lot of new people as well in this role. And I hope you'll contact me as well afterwards, and we can discuss all sorts of things, including how we might work together. So these are some of the focus issues of the Road Safety Working Group: engineering, road safety management, ITS and enforcement, education and training, advocacy and awareness raising. We do a lot of training around the world for senior executives, also in this area of fleet safety, which I think we'll hear about afterwards, and on road safety audits. So again, a little bit more about the initiatives that we're involved in. And we also are very much of a convener. We bring together different groups, experts, people who are concerned about issues such as road safety, to discuss problems, to discuss best practice solutions, and to take a look at a way forward, exactly as ISO's doing right now. I think it's really fantastic to get people together to discuss issues and commonly look for a way forward. So we are striving for global road safety, moving from pure engineering and infrastructure to a perspective that is more encompassing and wide-ranging actions on road safety, recognizing road safety very much as a system and not just a road issue. So I have a few questions here that I'd like to ask or invite people to put into the back of your minds. One is, what exactly is a safe road? You know, we've heard from Gordon quite a bit about safety and about the various aspects of safety. But what exactly is a safe road? Do we tolerate a crash? Do we tolerate one crash happening? Is, as has been noted as well earlier in the debate, are road crashes simply a part of the development process? Do we simply need to take them into stride as a part of a nation's economic development process? Or do we say, as Sweden has done and many other countries, Switzerland where I live as well, we have a zero tolerance, for example, for road fatalities? Maybe we take into stride that we cannot prevent all crashes, but perhaps we can work to prevent fatalities and injuries. So there are many national definitions of what a safe road is. There are also many national definitions about classifications of roads: primary roads, secondary roads. And as we discussed before, road safety only relatively recently emerged as a global issue. Before that, there was not a whole lot of transnational sharing, if you will, either of problems or of solutions. And now with the publication of the World Report in 2004, with now 8 resolutions, UN resolutions on road safety, also the World Health Assembly becoming engaged in road safety, there is an increasing international discussion on what is a safe road. And also, and I think this is fabulous, who is a safe road for? Is a safe road only a road that is safe for drivers? Or must that road also be safe for other road users? You know, in some countries, the way that you see that the infrastructure is developed, it's really fabulous infrastructure for vehicles. It may not be fabulous infrastructure, though, for other road users, such as pedestrians in particular, and cyclists. So I'm going to move here so I can move to the next slide. I'd also like to speak briefly about the global plan of action on road safety, which, as Gordon also presented in his presentation, is divided into 5 pillars: on road safety management, on safer roads and mobility, safer vehicles, safer road users, post-crash response. If ISO is to develop a standard or consider a further standard on road safety, it really must recognize safety in any case as the output of a collaboration among the elements of the road safety system. So cannot be a standard that just focuses on roads or just focuses on road users or even vehicles. It must recognize safety as the output of these different elements, and consider as well a multi-sector and a multidisciplinary approach. And ISO's done a fabulous job, I think, together with governments around the world in targeting first this issue of road safety management, because if we don't have a system for managing road safety and bringing it all together, we can tackle these different areas, but we may not achieve the kind of output that we could if we have a very good management system in place. So I think management is really key, and ISO's done a fabulous job in bringing that together. I think until this ISO standard, there was no real definition or no real collective agreement around the world about what road safety management should do, and that we really need, for example, a results focus. I'd like to say, though, about that one, there has been slow take-up, as far as I understand, of that road safety management ISO standard. It may be that the incentives are not strong enough in the global market, if you will, that people are not maybe demanding road safety enough. And this goes back to a discussion we were having as well during Gordon's presentation, that if we take a look, for example, at the area of safer vehicles, there are standards. They're not global standards, but they are standards that are very well accepted by, for example, vehicle manufacturers, the Euro NCAP, for example. And this is very much driven, I think, by the consumer demand, particularly in high-income countries. People will not tolerate or spend their money on cars that don't meet a certain safety standard. So there's the market that is driving the production of safer vehicles. It's difficult. I mean, and I think I should say as well, there are not that many global producers of motor vehicles. So, in some ways it becomes perhaps a little bit easier there as well. But we can't produce a safe road in Sweden and sell it to India, or produce a safe road user in the Netherlands and implant them, if you will, in India. We really need to home grow that, of course, in the countries. And here I think having an international standard could be very helpful. But also I think it's very important to ask the question of what are going to be the market forces that drive whether or not that standard gets picked up and is really, really used. I think now is the time is very ripe for that. There's quite a lot of, on the one hand, infrastructure development that is going on around the world. We're still battling with a lot of diverse national standards, of course, but I think there's also an increasing convergence around the world around what Gordon has talked about, and that is the safe and sustainable safety. So I would argue that this is really a very good time for ISO to consider developing a standard on, it could be called safe and sustainable safety, building on the road safety management standard and taking it to the next step, which could be on safer roads and mobility. But would combine as well safer roads and safer road users. So here we have that. There's some work that's going on in Africa, of course, trying to create a safer road environment, but we don't have really internationally recognized standards, on this issue. There are a lot of people like Gordon and myself as well who travel around the world preaching the Bible, if you will, of road safety. But if we had an international standard, I think this could be very, very helpful. And it goes beyond one nation speaking to another nation or one expert speaking to another expert. It becomes something that is really internationally accepted. I think I won't go into the safe systems approach so much. I think Gordon has done a fabulous job. Other than to say it is a philosophy for managing the road transport system towards the achievement of measurable results. So data then becomes very, very important, of course. It views also road crashes and injuries as predictable and therefore largely preventable, as opposed to being fatalistic. And as noted, the price of progress. There are so many countries that have got experience in this area, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to adapt, of course. We can't just adopt things. We cannot just translate Sweden to Nigeria. Of course, that doesn't work. But there are many, many principles, and I'm really not going to go into them too much into this presentation. I think it's something that could be picked up afterwards. So prevention efforts within the safe systems consider the road safety system as a whole, as opposed to individual sectoral solution. It's not just about roads, it's not just about vehicles, it's about the system as a whole. And it also recognizes human vulnerability to injury and error of judgment. And the safe systems infrastructure, roads and road signs are designed to reduce risks to as low as possible. Speed limits are set according to the safety of the road and the road sign. It's not rocket science, really. It's really not rocket science at all. It's taking a look at what you have, how is the road used, and what we can do here to reduce the level of risk to all road users. So I picked these two pictures out of the internet, one showing on the right a safe systems infrastructure, and the other on the left showing an intersection that, if you really look at the infrastructure, it's maybe not so bad. You could say it's got pedestrian crossings, there are markings, but it's not really being used in the proper way, I think, the way the engineers thought about it. So I think that, you know, as Gordon was saying as well, there maybe wasn't a whole lot of time taken by the engineers to actually observe how people use this space, and then decide how to create the safest system out of it. So this is my last slide to say there are international standards. There are some in the area of infrastructure from the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, UNECE. There are regional ones, the EU Infrastructure Directive. There are, of course, all over the world, most countries' national infrastructure standards. They're very diverse. I think it's time now for governments, for experts to come together and consider an international standard on safe and sustainable infrastructure, or let's say the safe systems approach to road safety. And there's so much information out there. You know, Gordon gave us some information from Canada, from what he's doing, also from the Netherlands. There are recommendations from the International Transport Forum, Australia, Sweden, and many others. So this is not unknown territory. There's a lot out there already that could be built from. So again, just to iterate my starting point, maybe it's time now for an ISO standard on safe road infrastructure, on a safe systems approach to road safety. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm done, and I look forward to possible questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen. It seems that at ISO we have an automatic restart of the computer planned in 9 minutes. My colleagues are running around desperately so that we can keep this line active, but there's a possibility that this will shut down in 9 minutes and 15 seconds, in which case what I'll do, don't worry, I will just redial us all in and we'll continue the discussion. Okay, automatic restart. We'll see if we can stop it, if we can. Inshallah was the word. Okay, Kathleen, thank you very much for that. It was very interesting how you talked about what is a safe road and who is the road for. Because in effect, a lot of planners have only considered the motorists, and that's why 50% of deaths are the vulnerable users, the pedestrians, cyclists, runners, motorcycle users, or people, I don't know, rickshaws and with their cows, and it haven't been considered. And we do need a comprehensive. Road security system. Okay, well, I think...
If I could just add to that as well, I think one of the challenges that we're facing is that, you know, in the developed world, in Europe, in the United States, there was an outcry in the 1970s. You know, we often talk about Nader in the U.S., who really brought this attention to the government, this issue to the attention of the government. Also in the Netherlands, in the UK, there were really outcries as the number of fatalities began to go up. We're not seeing that happen so much in low and middle income countries, in part because people, those who have vehicles who are, as you stated earlier, protected in a shell, those are the rich people. They have money, they have a voice. People who are killed and injured in road crashes are often the poor. They don't have a voice. So they don't have the lobby and the advocacy capacity that maybe average people in higher income countries do. There are many, that's changing. There's now, of course, the Global Alliance for Road Safety NGOs. We see around the world many advocacy NGOs sprouting up. South Africa has a few very, very good ones. For example, Arrive Alive. The motor vehicle associations around the world are getting more active. But there's not enough of an outcry. Governments are not being put under enough pressure. Also, I would say the road construction industry is not being put under enough pressure. And here's where I think that if we had a combination of an internationally recognized standard, where we can say there are no excuses. You cannot argue about national legislations, and having that and building to the lowest common denominator. There are billions that are being invested in the development of road infrastructure. And I think if we can get the standards right, I think that's really important. And I think it will be easier to hold, for example, the road construction industry to account for building to the highest possible standards. There's simply no excuse. Recognizing that the voice of the poor, the voice of the vulnerable in low-income countries is often very weak. But let's hold the builders, let's hold the governments also to account by having an international standard that will not give any wiggle room to build according to a lowest common denominator. But we need the rest as well, so management. I can't hear you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
I do, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, we are down to five minutes until shutdown of my computer, in which case I will relaunch as soon as we start up. What should we do? Should we take a little pause now, and I can restart it manually? That way we don't feel out of control. My colleagues say there's nothing we can do. Okay, well, we apologize. We're going to talk to the IT people, but what we have to do is restart. I'd rather restart at this point because you just made a very nice point, and we'll come back in, I'd say, 5 minutes, the time that my computer reboots, and I invite you all back onto the call. We apologize to everyone, and we'll see what happens. Thank you very much, Kathleen, and thank you very much to the other speakers. Hope to see you again in about 5 minutes. I'll restart myself.
I think you can just set my computer.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, hello, can you hear me? Okay. What happened? What happened? Hello, can you hear me? Have we saved ourselves? Oh my goodness. Well done, Belinda. Okay, one of my colleagues just whisked in with a fresh computer, and this is fantastic. We're still in line. I'm very happy indeed. So welcome back, everyone who did not abandon. And Gord, I think you had a question for Kathleen. I'm going to pass you the line. Oh, I just need to get my mouse working again so I can click on you. Okay, Gord. So over to you. We can't hear you. Are you muted? Gord, we still can't hear you. Gordon? Okay. You want to type? If you type me your question, I can ask it. See above. I can't see above anymore. We've lost all of the trail of comments. Sorry, Gord. Okay. In the meantime, oh, there we go. Question. We have a question. Can you summarize one of the design documents for LIC you mentioned on one of your last slides, for example, the Swedish standards?
I don't have, did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I don't have the documents in front of me here, but what I think would be interesting to do would be, if this is an idea that people find interesting, is to set up a group. I mean, there's the Swedish standards, of course. There's Safe and Sustainable Safety in the Netherlands. There are so many of them. Australia, of course, has got.
The mouse isn't working.
Australia's fabulous standards as well.
Okay. No worries. We can you hear me? We have to, the technical setup has been shifted somewhat. Kathleen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Kathleen, we're saying we can post this online afterwards on Zoho. You don't need to know the answer right away.
Okay,
but
fine.
Someone's asked a question.
Sure.
What other questions have we had? I think we had one from Gordon. Let me just find out what he's saying. Okay, Gordon's saying he's lost his sound. He might have to drop out and come back in a moment. Okay, no worries, Gordon. I can invite you back into the conference. Okay. Sorry, it's thrown me a little bit, this technical loss of voice and all that. Gordon, if you'd like to drop off now, we can invite you back in so we have sound. And I just wanted to bring back what you were talking about, the ISO 39000 standard. What's fascinating is that it's a management standard, which means you can apply it to any kind of organization and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It helps you to find out what you're doing right and awarding good practice, as well as finding out what you're doing wrong and with the blind spots. And it helps companies and countries communicate better with each other. It provides a universal standard that is a big contribution to the World Decade on road safety.
This is, I think, a very, very good...
My colleagues just brought me a mouse. Thank you very much.
This is, I think, a very good lead as well into the next presentation that Mathew will be talking about, because, and we haven't really discussed this in any of the presentations, but in many countries around the world, the road traffic is being produced, I should say in many low and middle income countries, road traffic is being produced largely by private companies or by government, because most people cannot afford to buy a motor vehicle. So if we can get companies on board with, for example, the 39001, we can make, I think, as well, a lot of progress in improving road safety, and in low and particularly low income countries and developing countries, because, as mentioned, many of the vehicles on the road are actually part of fleets. And many of the drivers, and of course the people who are working in those organizations, you know, they are influenced. They will be influenced then by that safety culture in the organization. And I know the oil and gas industry is really leading the way around the world in road safety management of their fleets.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. So, do any of the other panelists? We have a question from the audience. We can answer it now, or we can leave it to the end. It's Kate from Melbourne in Australia has just asked whether there are any existing standards or frameworks or toolkits in individual countries that can help them implement a safe system taking into account the 5 pillars. Is there anything that you may be aware of?
I think there's a lot out there. There's a lot. I mean, starting with the Decade of Action Plan, but also, as Gordon has illustrated in his talk, I mean, the Netherlands produces and makes available so much interesting information and fact sheets. If you take a look at the International Transport Forum as well, the documents that they're producing. You know, also the IRF is producing a lot of fact sheets as well around these issues. I think in a lot of ways it's not a question of anymore. If this stuff exists, it's kind of where is it and how do you find it? So it needs to be consolidated.
Great, thank you so much, Kathleen. Okay, well, I think we've lost a little bit of time. I'm very sorry that we interrupted your presentation a bit, but it was a very good one. And we're now going to move on to Mathew, who works for BP. And it's very interesting because I never thought of road safety as an occupational problem, but it is. And I can imagine that if you're moving huge trucks full of gasoline across the world, road safety has a whole different meaning. So how do you manage that, Mathew? I'm going to pass over the presentation to you, and we'll follow it by questions and answers. Kathleen, thank you very much once again. And Mathew, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to come at this from a slightly different perspective. So we've had some really good talks about, I guess, why safety is important to all of us, and also a lot on the infrastructure. And I guess I'm coming at it from a perspective of we can't change our infrastructure that we need to operate in, but it's absolutely critical to do everything we possibly can to get to a stage where we are as safe as possible. So I guess just a little overview of me. I've been at BP for 9 years now. I guess I didn't actually care about road safety until I joined BP. It was the furthest thing from my mind. As far as I was aware, you just did what you needed to, so you didn't get fined from the authorities. I guess I'm lucky that it wasn't a family tragedy or anything major that brought me into it, but more working for a company where there's just an extremely low tolerance from anything to do with safety incidents. So I remember when I joined, the first exposure was around BP's mobile phone policy. So it was pretty much engine on, phone off, and I was thinking to myself, well, you know, there's hands-free kits. There's other things you can do. You know, why do you have to be so strict as have the phone off when the engine's on? And as a lot of you probably have seen, that there's a lot of information that tells you a lot of things behind the facts that stand there. What could possibly be so important that you need to answer the phone or respond to a text while you're driving? And who am I to say that I've got the right to take other people's lives at risk because I need to, you know, respond to something? As part of my role, I've been out on quite a few ride-alongs with drivers and making sure that I'm aware of what they're going through on an everyday basis. And the first time, I think I was about 21 when I was doing work experience with BP, the first time I was in the truck, 10 minutes in, we were driving down a freeway with 40,000 litres of flammable fuel behind us, and a car cut us off in the middle of the road. And I just looked at the driver, and he didn't say anything. He just backed off, and then we sort of kept talking about the conversation we were having. And within 10 minutes, the same thing happened again. And it's like, how can this driver not even flinch at this? He just kept, you know, backing off the distance and giving the space. And a little while after that, I said to the driver, "Do you ever get annoyed with this?" And it was amazing that he had this response. And I was just this little 21-year-old. He certainly didn't have to impress me, but he's like, just happens all the time. You can't get annoyed at things like that. And his opinion is it just comes down to people are just unaware of the risks around them. We knew that it took 100 metres to stop that truck at 60 k's an hour, but road users don't need to have that understanding, or they just don't have that understanding at the moment. So I might start my slides now, if I can find my mouse. Hopefully this works. Please let me know if it is. Can anyone see the presentation?
I can see a black screen.
All right. Well, let's just revert back to it.
The oil over the road,
but no oil over the road.
Precisely.
Let me just change this back to how I had it set up. There we are. No, I've got this controlled. I'm sure of it. How about now? Can people see that? I can't even see the conversation anymore. All right, this isn't a very good beginning. Stop sharing and I'll start again. Can we see anything now?
Unfortunately not, Matthew. I think you have to open your PowerPoint on another screen and press a share screen.
Yeah,
managed. There we go. Very good. We can see your
You got it?
presentation now.
Lovely. Excellent.
Okay.
So,
you might want to put it in slideshow view.
See, it is in slideshow view already, so that's not a good start. We might just have to deal with it like this, because I don't want to
okay, that's fine.
keep trying and not succeed. Lovely. So we've covered most of the first pieces, and I touched on BP's perspective on road safety, which was we just can't have any road safety incidents. It's everything that we don't want to happen. So where we sort of move from there is, well, what can we actually do? And it's not sufficient that we approach it from a perspective of, oh, so many things are outside of our control. We need to look into every aspect that we can control. And where we sort of get to is a challenge on how we implement that. So we run, I guess, two different models of supply, and hopefully no one on the other side of this this microphone knows that, because it's just completely irrelevant, and we deal with both of them with very much the same rigor. So the first perspective is we've got third-party fleets, so companies that we employ to move product for us. And then we've got our own company-owned fleet, where we've got our own BP drivers and our BP trucks doing the task. Overall, between both of those different models, we move 50, or we travel 50 million kilometres every year. So we need to make sure that we're absolutely fantastic corporate citizens, and we're doing everything with that regard, as well as the fact that we just need to make sure that our product gets to where it needs to go. Nobody's injured in the way, whether it's our drivers or other road users. A challenge that we have is we share our roads. So there's only particular roads that are certified for dangerous goods to travel on them. So we're right beside people that are commuting to work. We're right beside parents that are taking their kids to school every day. We drive past the buses that are taking the tourists on their day trips. So we're very much in the middle of things, and we don't have a lot of choice around that. I guess where we sort of move to from there is the roads are also full of people with very different experience levels. So I drive my car, maybe 15,000 k's a year. We get some people that drive their car only a few thousand k's a year, and some that are professional road users and would do hundreds of thousands of kilometres a year. We've got different vehicles, different setups. We've got cars with traction control systems and anti-lock braking. We've got cars on the road that are very old and wouldn't have any of those. We've got all the different safety features you could possibly imagine, and none of them in different vehicles. So BP's perspective is we need to operate to a zero harm regime. And I touched on this before. It's not just for our staff, it's for everyone that interacts with us, all the people that are affected by our business. We need to make sure that we're learning from our past mistakes. We need to make sure that our safety message isn't just a corporate slogan, that it actually trickles down to all of the people that are within our operations, especially the people that are on the road every day. It needs to be a two-way communication. We need to make sure that we're still learning from the experiences that people are having, and we tailor our approach accordingly. So I mentioned before third-party fleets, other people that are working for us. We need to make sure that we're partnering with organisations that have the same values as us. It doesn't stop there. We've got many other realms that we need to look into, but I guess when we get to a practical sense, you can leave companies to do what they need to do, and have all the corporate policies behind that and the agreements. What we do is we try and get into a stage where we do have that field leadership, where I get out onto the road. I talk to my drivers. Our transport companies have what they call toolboxes on a regular basis. It's a chance for the drivers and the managers of the transport companies to talk about safety issues. I get out there and I attend those safety meetings, and I guess I show what BP's perspective is on it. And it actually caught me out. I was going to a toolbox in Perth last year, and one of the drivers said to me, "We've never, ever had a representative from the company come and visit us. And it just made me realise that that is my perfect time to actually let them know why we ask them to do certain things, why we care about what they do, and how they impact on us. And in a lot of instances, the drivers are very much the face of our company. They see our customers more than we see our customers. So we need to have that presence with them and let them know that they're part of this journey that we're travelling along. Another thing that we do is run carrier audits. So we look at whether the corporate policies and what our carriers tell us when they're trying to get our business is actually what they do on the ground. So are they maintaining their driver medicals? Are all their drivers licensed appropriately? Have they participated in their training? And we don't look into the specifics, but we need to make sure that what they say is a corporate policy is actually what they're doing. Driver training. So this flicks into the fleet that we own and operate. In the past, I used to think that, well, you get a driver's license and you apply for a job and you get it. It's very different in the fuel industry. We have a situation where we can even hire someone with fuel transport experience, and they'll still be buddied up with driver trainers and other drivers for sometimes up to 1 or 2 months until we're comfortable that they've got the skills they need and they display the behaviours that we need them to do in order to get the job done safely. I've tacked down there something called the Smith system. That's very much a training program that we try and encourage our drivers to participate in.
Matthew?
Yes?
Matthew, sorry to interrupt, but are you trying to move the slides, or?
No, I'm still
okay.
on.
That's fine.
Yeah. I was actually just flicking to the other screen.
Technical glitch. We've had a few today.
Yes, exactly right. No, keep piping in when you think I might be embarrassing myself. That'll be lovely. So can you still see the screen? Yeah, so the Smith program is a program that we've had all of our driver trainers accredited for, and it takes it a little bit further from just getting your license and knowing how to do your job to how to, I guess, drive in a way that's safe and appropriate for the vehicle and the product that we're carrying. So things like aim high in your steering and make sure that you get the big picture. Are there people on curbs trying to cross the road 100 metres away from you? Are there cars slowing down to turn that might potentially turn in front of you? Making sure that you've got an exit path if something goes wrong in front of you, being aware of the traffic around you. So it's, I guess, a very active style of driving. It's something that's very different to anything that I've ever come across from my personal training perspective. I guess where we move to from there is when I buy a new car, I'll jump into my new car and I'll drive it around. We don't let our drivers change vehicles unless they've been trained in the vehicles that they need to operate. I remember I bought a car a few years ago, and they were talking to me about how the anti-lock braking worked. And it's like, oh, I'm glad you told me that, because I don't necessarily push my foot all the way down to the floor and need to know what it operates like until it's probably too late. I guess in terms of bigger picture, we try and keep our drivers engaged, and one of the ways that we do it is we've started the BP Driver Academy. So it's all good that we put our drivers through the normal induction training and some ongoing toolbox training, but we've started a BP Driver Academy where we're getting external organisations, professionals in what they do, to come in and teach our drivers about particular things. So risk awareness is one of the modules, defensive driving is another, safe working practices is another, and very much a lot of that's to do with the products that we handle, the situations that we're in, and how that sort of comes to a head. So the last thing on this slide is DriveCam. So I'm not sure if many of you have heard about DriveCam before. It's not the newest technology, but it's something that can be quite challenging to implement. Drive cam is essentially a camera that sits on the cab window of the truck, like a rear vision mirror. It's got two cameras, one that faces outwards and monitors the traffic, one that faces inwards and sees the driver. Internally to that, it's got technology that can sense the braking speed, the amount of G-force that the truck is under. So if we have a vehicle that brakes too harshly, it will send a message back to us within 30 seconds of real time saying this truck has been braking too aggressively. Same thing for if it corners too quickly, or if the driver accelerates too fast, if the truck's empty, and it can respond that quickly. It's very new for us, and it's already yielding results. And this is something that we use to try and help us understand what behaviour we have and how we can train appropriately. I'll show on the next screen. Can everyone see the new screen? DriveCam automatically activates when it needs to, according to the G-force, but it also has the ability to record when the driver wants it to. So if the driver gets cut off by an aggressive driver, he can hit the record button and it will record a 12-second snippet. What we've got here, this is a driver that turned up at a site, and I'll explain it because it confused me when I first saw it. The truck couldn't actually get into the site, so hopefully you can see my little mouse pointer. That's a tank that we need to deliver to. This is the normal roadway that the truck would drive down. In between delivering to this site, the site installed these big poles in the roadway that held up a ginormous mesh roof. Essentially, this is a fish farm that you're looking at, and they do it to keep the birds away from the fish. These technology things can actually help us keep a lot safer, and we could see what the issue was and made sure that the driver could follow his Smith rules, which is leave yourself an out. He didn't get into that situation where he potentially couldn't have got the truck out of. Understand it's not road safety, but the mechanisms align. Delivery procedures is a big one for us, and I'm not sure if it really falls into the road safety category, but it definitely affects road users. So when we load our vehicles, they're done in an extremely controlled environment. Our terminals are kept safe from members of the public, contractors that need to work there. There's so much regulations around what can get into a terminal. But where we go to deliver is a very public area. So you've probably even put fuel in your car parked at a service station while the truck's been there. We need to make sure that our drivers are safe when they need to unload the truck. We've got pedestrians walking through. It's not unusual for people with lit cigarettes to walk straight through where we want to be setting up our fuel delivery. And I don't want to go into the dangers of that. That's a completely separate thing. But we need to make sure that we can physically protect this operation so that members of the public are not at risk when we're doing our deliveries. A recent program that I've been working on around the LPG space is installing physical barriers, so drop-in steel bollards that can protect the fill point where the driver needs to connect his hose, so cars aren't able to inadvertently impact that fill point and have LPG escaping. So we move on from there. There's many different fatigue management processes around the world. I can't talk to those necessarily, but where we come to from our perspective is we've got to make sure that our internal organisation is trained appropriately, that we're making sure our drivers are fresh and ready to come to work each day, that the drivers know what their responsibilities are, but also the people that are planning the work for the drivers know what their responsibilities are. We don't plan. We can't plan. We've got systems in place that will not let us plan for a driver to go beyond his legal hours to do. And on top of that, BP have a stricter level of hours that we want our drivers to operate to. Where we get to in instances where we've got third parties doing that work. We run several fatigue management studies, so we'll work with our carriers and we'll help get someone trained from an independent company into their business to help them understand how fatigue works in their business, how their drivers are coping with the rostering systems that they're using, and it's really an informative program to help the carriers understand whether they're doing things well or whether there's room to improve. Being an external company and an external carrier, there's very little information that comes back to us from it. It's more a case of helping our carriers to join us in this journey of road safety. Moving along, engagement groups is something that we've started. So this is very much a case of we can't sit in the head office and say that we know what drivers are going through. Drivers can't sit in a vehicle and say that they understand what BP's strategic thinking is on road safety. So we've set up engagement groups with everyone from drivers, depot managers, our data analysts, our logistics managers, our safety teams, and we've got several small groups together with representatives from each where we're able to discuss things like ways of working, losses of primary containment, driver safety, and we're getting engagement from people that are in a wide range of backgrounds. So it's not a very shielded corporate approach to this. The target is to make sure that we're getting realistic, achievable ideas that we can then implement to improve our safety program. I guess moving on from there, just flick down to the next page, drug and alcohol testing. This has been a little bit challenging in some parts of the industry, but we've got drug and alcohol testing at our terminals and our depots, and we're moving it over the next 12 months into being a standard situation across our driver groups. It is random. It's not targeted. There isn't a particular date that a particular person will get tested. We're trying to make it as fair as possible, but also to make sure that drivers realise that this isn't just another one of those policies. This is something that we believe in and we're working towards. I've got up on the screen here weekly safety message. A little while ago, when we started working with our company-owned fleet, we thought, what's a fantastic way to engage everyone in the country? And each week we'll have, whether it's a driver that thinks it up or a depot operator or someone like me at head office, we have our message of the week, safety alert. And this is something that gets printed out and pinned up on all the notice boards in all the different driver yards. We encourage so strongly people to participate in this, and they're not revolutionary by any way, shape or form, but what it does is it lets everyone see that we've got this regular safety message. It's something that we need to keep on the front of everyone's minds, and then what it does is it ends up letting our drivers realise that I've had this great idea or this great motto that I've been working to forever, and I really think that this could benefit other people, and this will be flashed out across the country for everyone to see. And that's it for the slides, which is fantastic. I don't like talking to slides, so I'll close this down. Dun, dun, dun. Now I've got to find my stop sharing button, which moved. Here we go. Can you see me again?
Yes, we can, Matthew. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Lovely. I might just actually, I'll put the summary in just really quickly.
Okay.
So no slides for this one. Road safety is a massive challenge for everybody, and we really can't get hung up on the number of variables that fit into this. A lot of my thought comes into, and this is my perspective, not BP's, driving is constant decision making. Do you speed up now? Do you slow down now? Merging, turning. What's that person going to do? Where did that car come from? It's just started to rain. How do I've got to slow down, but other people are still going quickly behind me. There's just so many decisions. wrapping up from my sort of all the slides that I've just shown you, standard licensing programs are never ever going to be sufficient for everyone. You can never ever have enough training and exposing people to different situations to really get them to the stage of what a safe driver may be. Another perspective is you can have as many safety programs as you want and a thorough experience and comprehensive training, but we still have instances across the industry where professional road users who are doing hundreds of thousands of kilometres a year will still have that one-off incident. Hopefully they're not fatalities, but we really need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to just keep trying to influence road safety, even if we think that it's outside of our control. I'll leave it there and open it up.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That's beautifully said. I was thinking of you last week because there was a terrible accident in Australia where a couple of people were killed by, I think it was a child, a mother, and an older person were killed in a freak accident in Australia. And BP did the right thing, automatically. I think you grounded all of your vehicles until you found out what was wrong, and that was a good move. Immediate grounding of all vehicles, find out what was wrong, and I believe the truck was found to have an error, and all the other trucks were fixed. So that's the right attitude. We have a few comments. Kathleen had to leave us, unfortunately. We have a question from Gordon. Gordon, I'm going to give you the screen so you can ask your question. Over to you, Gordon.
All right, can you hear me, Matthew? Hello, hello. Hello,
yes,
hello.
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, good. Oh, man, for a minute there I thought I had done it again to myself.
So no, all's working.
Okay, that driver cam technology is amazing. I actually know the police have it, but I've really not seen a lot of vehicles equipped with it. And so me, the natural guy that's trying to get better quality data, we talked about that earlier, wouldn't having that a mandatory device on all vehicles, somewhere where, as Karine pointed out, you can't smear it with Vaseline, it sees what happens, or at least some of what happens, because we know wide field of vision you can't see it all, so that we can improve not just roads but also drivers. Is that something you would push for? Because it certainly is helping BP.
We would certainly love every vehicle that's operated on our work, whether it's the sedans that our business managers drive to see customers, or whether it's the trucks that are hauling product for us. We would love it on every vehicle. A challenge that we had with our third-party fleet is some carriers are hesitant to it. Most of the carriers that big operators, well reputable companies, are very supportive of it. It's not necessarily everyone though, but we've recently signed up with a new carrier for a lot of our metropolitan work, and this is something that they're implementing. It's absolutely fantastic technology. It doesn't record the driver unless the system is activated because of harsh braking or going around a corner too quickly. So I think a lot of the concern was around privacy for the drivers. The drivers don't want to be inspected all the time, and it can be a bit of a distraction for them. So I think the mechanism whereby it only activates in certain instances should go a long way to making that less of a barrier. But I would support, and BP would definitely support this in every vehicle we operate.
Excellent. So hopefully it's only a matter of time before BP makes it a requirement of all its contractors, and then, hey, Volvo adapts it into every one of its vehicles, private and public.
That would be absolutely amazing to get to that stage.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both. It's very interesting. It's been a very interesting conference because we span the whole spectrum from government policies through to what companies are doing to go perhaps beyond government policies through their own internal standards. So, what is this all for? Why are we having these discussions? People who are watching this, what can you do to contribute to improving the situation? I'm now going to pass you on to Karianne Venter, who's the moderator of the ISO NextGen group platform, and she will introduce what the group is about and how you can participate. Karianne, over to you.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Are you able to hear me? Thank you very much for the interesting presentations. I've been going along and making notes to include all of the information on the Zoho platform. The ISO NextGen project is the opportunity for you guys, the young professionals out there, to actually make a difference in terms of road safety. And I think that the free speakers today have given us so much food for thought already. If I think about, Gordon, your presentation on the safe systems, the data challenges that we have in some of the countries, it's going to be interesting to hear from people in South America, in India, other developing countries, what your situation is. I think that institutional management, in terms of the pillars, the decade of action, I think that is definitely something that is taken for granted across the world, and it's going to be an interesting discussion on, because you need data to get funding. You need political will to get anywhere with road safety. In terms of Kathleen's discussion on the infrastructure, the safer infrastructure, again, I think that contexts differ, and in terms of the pillars, the 5 pillars, very little has really been done in terms of EMS or post-crash care. And it would be interesting to see if there is perhaps a need for developing a standard to improve time to care, to emergency care, things like that. So I'm putting it out to you guys. The Zoho platform is already live. There's so many of you who have been participating already. Lastly, in terms of the workplace road safety that BP is doing, I honestly feel on a personal level that any organization who has vehicles on the roads, whether it's BP or courier companies, fundamentally road safety is part and parcel of that company. And they should take ownership of road safety. And one thing that we've noticed here is that there's a very big gap between having vehicles on the road and actually committing to taking ownership for road safety. Okay, guys, so I'll be talking to you on Zoho. If there's anything in terms of the presentations that we can post, please let me know. I think Kathleen's questions and the ones that she had in her presentation, I'm going to post that, and we're going to see if it's possible to load some of the standards and the documentation that is available, or make summaries of that and get input. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karianne. We're very happy to have you on board. We have a lot of people on that community already, Zoho, a lot of professionals in road safety, so that's very reassuring. Okay, well, we're now in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. I'm very happy we've kept to time. And we have an amazing panel here. And do you have any final thoughts? What's the one takeaway that you would like people to have from this seminar? Gordon, shall we start with you?
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. Okay, well, Madam Toastmaster.
I know you can handle it.
Well, if nothing else, take away your passion. I hope we've been stimulating enough to get you guys to think a little bit outside where your context is. I've certainly learned something, and I just want to thank Kathleen and Matthew for sharing their perspectives, because nobody knows it all. And wherever you are, look at your community as the experts. I mean, yes, we're all, quote unquote, everybody looks to us as leadership and experts, but no, we're actually just good at assimilating information and helping facilitate a solution. And maybe we're, creative, and we've got a few extra letters and digits after our name, but honestly, it's about relationships. And the longer I'm in this game, the more I see that it is about that community, those relationships. So we have to really lean heavily, and nothing's going to happen unless the communities we're in, and that means right from the bottom up. The leaders have this great vision, but if there's nobody following them, forget it. We have to motivate leaders, not just with good business case, but also the people around us. So continue to build your relationships. I hope the passion you can take away from this, the broader horizons from what's been shared today, help you to realize to reach out and include more people. I wish we could have had 1,000 people on this to actually have a relationship building network as part of this whole process we're going to go into, because that's what it's going to need to make a difference, guys, is group effort, relationship, and community. So thank you.
Carrie-Anne, over to you. What's your one takeaway from today? What's one thing you'd like us to take away?
I think for me, I'm also part of this community, and I would like to encourage the other young professionals, whether they're from whichever discipline, open your mind, think of creative things, things that you feel can in the future make a difference. It's very important to address this issue that is such a huge problem. So without you guys, you are the future. So it's going to be your decision and your influence intended that's going to make the difference. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Carrie-Anne. And now over to you, Matthew. Any last words, takeaways, inspiration?
I think that at the end of the day, we're all normal people, and I can't speak for everyone, but probably most of us are in a situation where we are on the roads very regularly. We've all got the ability to do something, whether it's where I start, which is being annoying with all of my friends, telling them not to look at their phones when they're driving, and I guess taking the message a little bit more personally to the groups. Or you might be in a position where you actually have the ability to control what safety mechanisms you're using with your transport fleets, or whether you're working at councils or infrastructure departments and you can actually influence where they're going to take things from there. So there's something that we can all do. Hopefully everyone's passionate about their role in this, and hopefully we can get some really interesting conversation over the next 6 weeks, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it the whole way through.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Oh, we lost you for a moment, Matthew. We just saw black again. And as for me, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you. You've been very good speakers. We've covered a lot of ground. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to view this and to think about what you can do to make a difference, whether it's in your personal lives, looking after your families, whether it's influencing government policies or the policies of your organization. We need you. This is the UN decade for action, and everyone needs to be involved. And there's not one life that should not be saved. And I believe we should aim for 0 deaths if possible. And of course, road transport is linked to so many other issues like climate change and pollution, that governments have to take it seriously in mitigating climate change and so on. Well, we're going to finish this session regretfully, in fact, today, but the debate will continue on Zoho Online. Send us your CV if you'd like to join to alcorta@iso.org. We'll post it up. And the presentations will be made available as well. Any questions, even after you watch this, please share. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day all, and remember, be safe when you cross that road.